This is Module 4 of Evidence-Based Practice in Language Disability Evaluations. In this module, we're going to look at elicitation and analysis of language samples using the SLAM, the School Age Language Assessment Measures. This is going to be a live one, and the next one will be telepractice. As we talked about in the last module, these SLAM materials are based in evidence-based practice. So they're research-based, meaning the language elicited and the analysis is consistent with the research. We're looking at expository language, persuasive language, theory of mind, perspective taking, cohesion in terms of temporal, relational, and causal cohesion, inferencing, making meaningful predictions, false belief, etc. Then we're looking at the clinician's expertise, clinician's own perspective and expertise. And one of the things with language samples, they take too long in the real world. You can do them in graduate school and spend 3 hours, 2 hours analyzing them. But what we've done with the SLAM is we've created a way of getting a strong language sample in 3 minutes or less, meaning less time to analyze. And also the guidelines for analysis that we've created provide the clinician with info on what each question is looking for, and that will assist in the analysis. And then because the context is familiar to many students you're going to be evaluating, there's great flexibility in the appropriate responses. As we're looking at language, we're not looking at the content, we're looking at the context. This is the grammar and syntax context. Are they able to express themselves naturally and functionally? Do they have good functional communication skills? So that's the 3 components of evidence-based practice. Again, a recent study of bilingual Jamaican Creole and English-speaking preschoolers, the authors found that the school-age language assessment measures were a prominent example among a small number of assessments designed to minimize cultural and linguistic bias. Carla Washington, first author, Carol Westby, second author, and then other colleagues of theirs. So we're going to look at the subway. Now, as I said, I developed this because I was doing evaluations in New York City and I wanted to have a way of eliciting language that I felt was more functional and natural. So having something stuck in the door is kind of functional and natural in New York. If you look at the kinds of questions, they get more and more complex. What happened? How did this happen? So these are expository language. What happened? She was stuck. How did this happen? Often you get that with the first question. Did this ever happen to you? Now we're taking their own perspective, their personal narrative, and then what would you do if this happened to you? So each question becomes more complex in terms of the student's ability to understand what's being asked. I have used the subway for kids who are only 3 years old, 3.5 years old, New Yorkers, and it works. Those videos are online in the preschool assessment modules. Now we're going to show you a video of Sophie, and Sophie is a 13-year-old in this video. You're going to listen, see how well she understands the questions, her problem-solving skills, her ability to make inferences. And Sophie is a girl who had lived in 5 different homes and 5 different schools before her 5th birthday, or her 5th grade. 5 different schools, 5 different homes. Her home, she's been exposed to Puerto Rican Spanish earlier on, then African American English, then Spanish influenced English, and some exposure to general American English, but the quality of her schoolings was not strong. About 2.5 years before I did this evaluation, she had been adopted by 2 PhD professors who spoke only general American English in the home. And they had her evaluated by a private evaluator about 6 months after they adopted her to see what was going on and what they could possibly do for her. And that private evaluator gave her the self, and she was diagnosed with a severe language disorder. All right, so let's see what Sophie has to tell us about her language using the subway. I'm going to show you this picture of the subway. Have you ever been on a subway or a train?
Yes.
Where?
In New York, because we have an apartment there. So we
that's right. We teach at the same place. I don't have an apartment there. I have an apartment downtown. So this is an old New York subway. Ready? I'm going to ask you some questions, and I just want you to tell me what you think. Ready? Anything. So, what happened?
The guy was trying to get out. He didn't get out fast enough, so then his foot got stuck.
Yes. How did this happen?
There was probably a big crowd, and he couldn't get out in time, and he was probably pushing people, and then finally got out and got caught.
Did this ever happen to you?
Almost.
Almost. Let's hear.
With my arm. So when we were going back to our apartment, our mom was still stuck because her Metro card wasn't working.
Oh, yeah.
Even though she just paid to get it, but it was because she was swiping it the wrong way. So then I was waiting for her, and I was trying to leave the door open for her.
Yeah.
And the door started closing, and then Celia pulled me out, and my hand almost got stuck, and it I was so freaked out. And I was
Now, what would you do if that happened? If your hand got stuck?
If my hand got stuck,
So
I would probably start yelling. Because I would just be so freaked out.
Yep.
Because I know it will hurt.
So here is what we call the guidelines for analysis. And you can write what they're saying. The guidelines themselves, if you print them out, they're a single page. And there's more space. This is just so we can fit it in here. It tells you what each question is looking for. And you can generally decide whether it's 2, so a reasonable response, 1 doesn't answer fully, or 0 incorrect, even with many prompts. How did this happen? So you could write these right in. That's actually what I was doing. Some people record the sample. You can do that. They're very short. I sometimes record and write them down in the moment. Here's what she had to say. You can see what happened when she said there was probably a big crowd and he didn't get out, so then his foot got stuck. She completely tells us the story. She doesn't just say his foot got stuck. She then gives us a context for how that might have happened. Problem solving, making inferences, and using a nice dependent clause right here. So then his foot got stuck out. Here's a got stuck. Here's the consequence. Did this ever happen to you? And then almost, I love that word. When we were going back to the apartment, so there's your dependent adverbial clause temporal marker. It happened to my mom. That's the independent clause that happened to my mom because she was swiping it the wrong way. And there we have the because adverbial clause for causation. What would you do if this happened to you? I love that use of she held that conditional tense, probably start yelling, I know it would hurt. So beautiful marking of causation, consequence, time, and she has a noun clause there in the end. I know, inferred as that. I know it would hurt, that it would hurt. So there's your noun clause. So this is another complex sentence. Expository language with a strong personal narrative. I love this. They're also a very socially and pragmatically appropriate because, of course, it was the mom doing the wrong thing. Good, meaningful predictions. She knows what she would do, how it might hurt her. And I just love, the use of the modal and conditional tenses. So it's a beautiful language sample in a very short way that you could say you'd want to do more assessment. But with that kind of complex syntax and those kind of inferences and temporal, relational, and causal cohesion, this is the kind of kid that does not have a language disorder. So she showed this ability to produce a variety of complex sentences. And again, I would put this in my evaluation. And after each one, these two I'd probably go together and I would put quotes of and identify what kind of clauses they were and put the clause there so they could see it. I would talk about, her personal story about with her mom. I give examples being persuasive using expository language. So you can see we got some beautiful language out of her just with 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. I would also say we see an age-appropriate ability to follow questions of increasing complexity, to integrate and organize her thoughts using problem solving and inferencing, and express them through the grammar of general American English. Again, this is rare for me to put this in an eval, but we're not assessing General American English to identify a disorder. Certainly we know about her multilingual background and multidialectal background, but in Sophie's case, she was only consistently exposed to General American English for about 2 years, 2.5 years before this evaluation. And also because she was identified as having a severe language disorder based on the self, I wanted people to know, please, this kid has typical language. So she's rapidly learned it. Now we're going to look at another girl. This is Gabrielle. She is 9 years, almost 9.5 years old, and she's in the 3rd grade. We'll watch her doing the subway. So I'm going to show you a picture. Have you ever been on the subway? Of course. So here's a picture of something interesting that happened in the subway. Now, can you tell me what happened?
The foot is stuck between the 2 doors.
That's right. And how do you think that happened?
Because the door opened a little bit and then maybe he went out.
Did that ever happen to you? Well, let me tell you. I've seen it happen a lot on the subways. Now, I've never actually seen it with a shoe, but I've definitely seen it with bags. And it's happened to me with my black bag that I have here. I was getting in the subway. I was a little tired, so I wasn't paying that much attention. All of a sudden, my stop was called. I grab my bag, and I go out, and guess what happens? The door's closed on my bag. I'm like, come on! So finally, I was able to get the doors open. Somebody helped me, and then I went home. So you must have seen that happen or have something like that happen to somebody in your family or to you, did you? You never saw anybody get stuck in the doors? Wow, nobody ever held the doors open with their fingers? Interesting, okay. But now let me just ask you a question. What would you do if that happened to you? What would you do?
I would say help.
Yeah, what else?
And scream.
Yeah, anything else?
And get hurt.
You think you might get hurt? Yeah, you might get hurt, right? Would you have to go to the hospital, do you think? Yeah? I don't know. I hope not. I hope it never happens to you. Right? Okay.
Here's Gabrielle, story of what happened. She just describes what she sees. The foot is stuck between the 2 doors. She doesn't give us any indication of what happened, what kind of a door it was. She doesn't make inferences about context. The question is not what do you see, but what happened. And she answers the question or the statement, describe what's in the picture. So there's something limiting about this answer. It's true, but let's see if we can get more from her. How did this happen? So she does give us more. She gives us a nice adverbial clause. How did this happen? The independent clause is inferred this happened because the door opened a little bit and maybe he went out. So that's nice. She pulls in the context. She didn't tie it back to the fact that the foot got stuck when he went out the door, but she definitely does respond to the question. Now, even after my personal narrative, which I always have one in my back pocket, because usually kids do not have a personal narrative themselves, but about 70 or 80% of the time, when you tell them a personal narrative, they have something. So the fact that she doesn't have a personal narrative, that's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with having a personal narrative and perhaps not wanting to share it. This is nothing, but it's great to get one, of course. And what would you do if this happened to you? The good thing is she actually does understand this question. What would you do if this happened to you? She holds onto the would. I would say help. Anything else? So I'm having to pull stuff out of her, right? She does respond to the question, but she doesn't really provide too many problem-solving approaches. It's a very passive kind of scream and yell help, and but that's still okay. She does have that conditional. She holds that would in there. So what I would analyze with Gabriella, I would say that she showed the ability to produce an adverbial clause with because, and she had that context. She responds in simple sentences or short phrases. She made meaningful and reasonable predictions if she were the one stuck. But I'm a little worried about that she didn't it wasn't so fully answered, and she wasn't fully responsive to the questions. Now, so based on this language sample analysis, I have some suspicions that she might have a language disorder. But I also know she may be shy and uncomfortable with producing a lot of language in this situation. I would definitely continue to assess her, and what we did was use one of the Bunny Dog Goes Home card sets, and that was kind of affirmed the fact that she has difficulty making inferences. She has difficulty putting things together in terms of making meaningful predictions of what's going to happen. And her sentences tend to be very short and simple, although she can make some complex sentences. So we do confirm it later, but with this, I just say she may be shy, she may be uncomfortable, so let's see what else we can get from her. And now we're going to watch Batman, age 10, almost 10 and a half again. He's a 4th grade student. He is an L, meaning he is an English language learner. He's in an all-English classroom, and he is a bilingual para who uses only English with him. He came raised in the Dominican Republic in an all-Spanish-speaking home until about 2 years before I met him. So let's see Batman on the subway.
Okay, so I have a picture I want to show you. This is a picture of a subway. Have you ever been on the subway before?
Yeah, once.
Okay. Okay, so what happened in this picture?
It happened like a guy stuck his foot and he trying to get it out by the door. And and by accident the feet got stuck and the door already got closed.
Wow. How did it happen?
I think he was like tying his shoes.
Mm-hmm.
He was like crouching, and he put his foot back like that, and then he kind of like tripped or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he was tying his feet in the front.
And then what happened?
The door was closing, and by accident he got a cat.
Did this ever happen to you?
No, never.
Well, it happened to me one time. I was getting off the subway and I had a large bag and I was rushing, and as I went through the doors closed on my bag and I was stuck.
Oh.
I was really scared. Did you ever see someone get there?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah.
What happened?
I saw like a guy and try and carry a big fat box,
Uh-huh.
and he tried and push it so hard, and he was like in the train, and he was pushing it like a lot, like something like a elephant or something. I think it was like a dog.
Inside the box?
Yeah, and because I saw because there was holes,
Oh.
and he was pushing so hard, the door was already closing, and by accident his foot got stuck.
So what would you do if this happened to you?
I will call somebody can help me, or I can take off my shoe,
Mm-hmm.
like that I can like escape.
So Batman, and we let the kids choose any name they wanted. Batman tells the whole story. Happened like a guy stuck his foot and he tried to get it out by the door. And by accident, the feet got stuck and the door, already got closed. So he gives us the big picture on how the guy's shoe got stuck in the door. He has some difficulty with the structures that can be attributed to English as a new language, but he does have a complex and compound sentence with a noun clause. It happened that a guy got stuck. It happened that a guy got stuck. That's your noun clause. And he tried to get it out by the door. And by accident, the feet got stuck and the door, it was already closed. So you got a nice complex sentence there. And you know, there are definitely features of Spanish influenced English or transfer from Spanish. But he does a beautiful job in telling the story. And you can see that he has the underlying syntax. How did this happen? Now let's see if we can get some inferencing, complex sentence opportunity using because, maybe when. I think, again, another noun clause that he was tying his shoes. He was like crouching. I love that word. I'd mentioned that probably. And put his foot back like that, he showed us, and then he kind of like tripped or something. So he's really problem solving to figure out exactly what kind of body movements and accidents might have happened so that while he was tying his foot, he put it back and it got stuck. Great problem solver, great storyteller. And then what happened? The door was closing and by accident he got catched. I think that might also be influenced from Spanish, meaning quedó atrapado. I don't know, I just have that feeling the way he got catched. It could be a gap word, but I don't think so. Quedó atrapado is what I'm thinking. So we got a complex first sentence with that noun clause. He certainly gives a reasonable and complete expository language as to how this happened with good problem solving and inferencing skills. And then I would note the crouching, the tripped, and the by accident. He's got some nice structures of language, and he certainly has many of the features that we're looking for: the ability to explain, to tell a personal narrative, to have cohesion in the stories that he's telling, or the language, to have complex sentences, to have temporal, causal cohesion. I didn't mention it before, but the one right before where he says he already got it. Now, what about this? Did this ever happen to you? Again, he doesn't bite. He says he doesn't have a personal narrative. Even after the SLP, but says the narrative. But then he's like, well, I got something for you. So then he makes up this story for us. I saw a guy and he was trying to carry a big fat, so this could be the pro drop of Spanish, no subject, trying to carry a big fat box, and he was pushing it so hard. Again, the auxiliary verb be is not there, and that could be the influence of AAE. He is exposed to AAE, Dominican Spanish. In his school, there's a lot of AAE in the classroom. And he was like in the train, and he was pushing it. There you go, again, like a lot, and something like an elephant or something. It was so heavy, and I think it was like a dog. Yeah. Oh, really? And I saw it because there was holes, and he was pushing so hard. The door was already closed and accidentally his foot got stuck. So he tells this crazy story, wonderful story, that he's making up to try to please the evaluator with this great story. So he's very engaged and interested in giving a good explanation, comes up with a very creative story. He uses simple and compound sentences initially, then uses the adverbial because to explain how he knew there was an animal inside because there was holes. And also the noun clause, I think it was like a dog. Temporal cohesion is marked by ready for already, and the use of the adverb accidentally to show how his foot became stuck. So he's got a lot of nice language in there. What would you do if this happened to you? So I would call somebody can help me, or I can take off my shoe and then I can escape. He is that relative clause like there with the who understood. I would call somebody who can help me, or I can take off my shoe. He uses then as a real temporal marker, take off my shoe, and then I can escape. And good inferencing and problem-solving skills. So Batman can create complex sentences. We have noun clauses, relative clauses, and we also had adverbial clauses with the causal cohesion, with the because. He shows adequate causal, temporal, and relational cohesion. He could take different perspectives. He told this beautiful, spontaneous, creative story that all tied together. He made inferences, he could problem solve and make reasonable and meaningful predictions. And he does show some second language acquisition. He's still acquiring the structures of general American English, but he certainly can use language functionally with some real complex syntax with a lot of cohesion. So how to elicit and analyze language samples in evidence-based practice through teletherapy. So we've just looked at 3 kids where we did the subway and it was live, and now we're going to look at what we've developed to use the SLAM cards and the SLAM materials through teletherapy in evidence-based practice. That's our next module.